Hello, living as a disciple. Thought I was going to say life in Jesus students. And welcome to your first Ed Puzzle. Happy New Year. My New Year's resolution is to make many more of these videos so that you can enjoy me both in and outside of class. For today's video, you will need this book, Catholic Social Teaching, with the mahogany cover. Smells like rich mahogany. And I will share my screen with you. Did you do this? I don't remember. All right. Intro to Social Justice, Living as a Disciple, Lap 1, Day 2, homework. So what I'd like you to do first is to open your textbooks and read the first two paragraphs of Article 1, God's Original Plan of Just Community, on page 10. Be ready to answer a question. All right, so class on social justice. Why is this necessary, and why this idea of social justice? And it's because God created us to be social beings, to live in relationship with others. We learned last semester that it's meaningful relationships that fulfill us because of the purpose of creation. We hear in Genesis this idea, it's not good for man, it's not good for people, for humans to be alone. Right? And then we're made in the image of a triune God. We're made in the image of a God who is a trinity, a communion of persons. That God is a relationship, and so we desire a relationship made in the image. Pope Benedict, Benny the 16th, said, "No one lives alone, no one sins alone, no one is saved alone. The lives of others continually spill over into mine, and conversely, my life spills over into that of others, for better or for worse." That really you can't, this class is meant to be an extension of morality, and really you can't look at morality and not include the people around you. It's not just your decisions, it's not just you and God. You're intricately connected to those around you. We are social beings. So a few definitions we have to get through just before we have some of this discussion. One is the common good. And the common good is the collective ability of all people to reach their fulfillment. So not some people, not the majority, not my friends, not the people who look like me, not the people who come from my background, but the collective ability of all people to reach their fulfillment. No one is excluded, right? It includes a respect for life and dignity. So all people must be able to meet their basic human needs. We can't be fulfilled. We can't reach our fulfillment. Our basic human needs are not met. And the common good establishes a peaceful and a just society when everybody is able to reach their fulfillment. This idea of the common good recognizes that we are interdependent, not that we are independent, but that we are interdependent, that the good of the individual is inseparable from the communal good, that what is good for me is often good for others. So I'll explain this a little more in class, but for some of you who don't get math, especially over the video, this might not make sense. But imagine you had, let's just say, the number 12. The common good looks at a multiplication sum, not an addition. So if one person has 12 and another has 0, in the end, you have 0. Right? If one person has nothing and then the other person has everything, the common good is not achieved because one person has 0. If one person has 11 and one person has 1, 11 times 1 is 11. 10 times 2 is 20. The closer they get together, the greater the sum if you're going by a multiplication sum. So if you had 12 and you had 6 times 6, 36, that's going to be the most you can get out of that. That the common good is achieved when everybody has the ability to reach their fulfillment, not the addition sum. So an addition sum views it as when something is taken away, when someone else gains something, it's taken away from me. So for that one person to have 2 or 3, I would have to have 10 or 9. That it's not meant to be viewed that way, that actually what's good for me, what's truly good for me is good for everybody around me, is good for all people. Not what is good for me hurts other people. That doesn't make sense. That's okay. We'll discuss it more in class. Moving on. So a couple more definitions. What is justice? The classic definition of justice is the commitment to and the act of giving each person their due. What is due to them by the very fact that they're human, by the very fact that they're made in the image of God. The commitment to and the act of, right? It's an action. Justice is an action of giving each person their due. So why do we have a term social justice? It seems like justice pretty much sums it up. Well, the reality is, especially in the last 50 years, we live in a much more complex world than we ever have before. And 300 years ago, when you only knew the 40 people who lived in a 2-mile radius of you on their farms, right? Justice was simpler in some ways, right? Your neighbor had a bad crop, and so you supported them. You gave them some of your own food when they needed it, right? That was simple. Today, it's complex. Today, when I buy peanut butter from the store, that affects people on 3 different continents. It's a much more complex world. So social justice is the defense of human dignity by ensuring that human needs are met and human rights are protected for all. So it's just giving more information about it. And again, this term was necessary to apply justice to a more complex world. As the world has changed, our terms have had to change in order to work for justice. All right, last side here. Sin and society. So because we're social beings, all sin has a social dimension. It affects others. Now, sometimes the effect is not apparent or very direct, or it takes time to realize. But every sinful action, every action that goes against natural law, in some way hurts another person. It hurts other people. All sin has a social dimension. If you want in class, you can bring up something considered sinful, and we can talk about how it affects others. But I think a lot of them are pretty obvious, right? Take a really obvious one like cheating on a spouse. Like clearly that has a social effect that hurts others. Something like murder clearly has an impact on society. So what happens when over and over people sin? Well, we have this term called social sin. I know there's a lot of definitions in this one, but we just kind of got to get through it. So social sin is the collective effect of many people's sins over time that end up corrupting society. So for example, let's look at something in our society that we would consider wrong. So the gender pay gap, the fact that women get paid on average about 80 cents to what a man gets paid. Is this any one person's fault? No. In some situations, there might be a male boss, and he might not necessarily even be at fault for some of these things just because of the policies a company has or who a company promotes. It's not always a conscious decision, but clearly there's something wrong there. Clearly there's something wrong in this situation, even if it's not one person's fault. And if you looked at something like racism, is that one person's fault? No, but clearly there's a social sin there that has a corrupted society that has hurt people. It's created what are called structures of sin. So structures of sin are a sinful pattern of relationships within society that block justice and disrespect human life. So structures of sin, an example could be right, the fact that we have so few women leaders in our politics, right? That's a sinful pattern of relationships. It blocks justice from happening. It disrespects human life. It's a result of social sin. It's a result of hundreds of years of discrimination, of oppression of women. Right? It's no one person's fault, but it's created something that now blocks justice and disrespects human life. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. We'll get more into that in class. And as always, like, comment, and subscribe. Another New Year's resolution of mine is to get over 100 subscribers on YouTube, which would require all 90 some of my students to do it. So maybe I should make that extra credit. Anyways, that's it for today.